Now we want to shift our attention to the impacts of media. I had to learn about norms first because one of the major impacts of media is on norms, social norms. Media have always been used to cultivate schemas and dictate norms. And whoever controlled the media had an agenda, and based on that agenda, they would try to get people to think a certain way. And that is looking at focusing on impacting their schemas and actually impacting their social norms, what they believed was acceptable. Media dictate the symbol system. Ergo, the media available to society shapes that society. Think about what happened with the introduction of Twitter when you were limited to the number of characters to use. People had to come up with a shorthand. They changed the symbol system. And any changes in media alter the symbolic environment. And that's a good example of changing the symbolic environment. And that alters society because communication is based on symbols. That was essentially McLuhan's point. He asserts that society is shaped based on the dominant media of the day. And he separated human evolution, or the evolution of technology, communication technology, into four major ages. You don't need to know these, but it's really important to understand where he's going with this. In the tribal age, according to McLuhan, the tribe is the dominant social unit. You had to interact to get information. I'm not talking about information that you could glean by looking at the environment and animal tracks and things like that. I mean information about the social unit, about anything having to do with cooperation. You had to interact. So, because you had to interact, because there was no written word, everything was more present. It was immediate. It was, you were living in real time because once something was said, it was done with. In this particular era, hearing is believing. Now, McLuhan contends that hearing is more important than vision. I don't agree. I think hearing may be more important than it is now, but I don't believe that it was ever more important than vision. His contention was you needed to be able to listen to hear what was on the other side of a rock or a tree or things like that. Well, okay, but you still had to have your sight. We moved from there into the literate age. And what that allowed us to do is get information without being present when the information was delivered. In other words, we didn't have to be there to listen to somebody talking about it. We could read about it. So you're detaching the meaning from context. What that allowed is this splintering of groups into individuals. You didn't have to get together in a group to get information. You could read about it. Straight line and left brain thinking move into limelight. And the reason for this is the construction of language, the writing of language is very much a linear sequential process. It's very much based in the left brain. Vision becomes more important, hearing less so. We moved from there into the print age. Well, this allowed people to give a lot of people over a big area the same information in the same form. So now you can begin to really have impact on social norms and the way people think and what they think about over a region. What this also meant was, that was the second bullet point, that a lot of tribes could access the same information. But if you're going to reach a lot of different people, you kind of got to get rid of the dialects. You have to choose a specific language and disseminate the information in that language. So this gave rise to a national language, which in turn gave rise to nationalism. We moved there into the electronic age, and this is where I think you have to be careful when you're looking at McLuhan. I would almost separate this into kind of, the electronic age stage 1 and the electronic age stage 2. In the electronic age, distance and time are not issues. And this started with the telegraph. You could transmit information instantaneously over distance. You could get the information at the same time it was being delivered. You didn't have to wait for the newspaper to arrive or things like that. He contends that you return to a pre-alphabet oral tradition. I disagree. In phase 1, where you're still looking at just the telegraph, you're basically still looking at reading things. It's not until you get into radio, television, etc., that you can move back into an oral tradition. Creation of global village, aware of everything, everywhere in present time, no privacy, everything is everybody's business, and immediacy is the norm. Well, immediacy is the norm. I think it starts to become the norm with the telegraph and certainly progresses. But these last three, the creation of the global village, no privacy, immediacy, I think that occurs more in stage 2 of the electronic age, which is the digital age. Now you can lump the two together because digital age still depends on a power source, so it's still electronic, but it has some really key differences. And if you look back at the electronic age and McLuhan's assertion of a global village, that's one of them. Immediacy of information is another one. Anyway, the digital age, you decentralize power and control. And what that means is traditional media, newspapers, radio, TV, they're all controlled by somebody else. Somebody else is selecting the information. Well, in the digital age, when you go on the internet, anybody can put information on there, or you can communicate via social media across boundaries. Then the media starts to lose its control and its power. Information is not scarce, but truth is, or let's say accuracy is. That's why the paradigm in teaching changed from teaching students how to find information to teaching students how to evaluate information. So now you have digital tribes. And what he means by this is, so in a real world, your tribe is probably defined by physical location. It's your town, it's your village, etc. In the digital age, you can find people who think like you do at a distance in a virtual world. So you can band with them to make a tribe. Well, the impact of these strongly egocentric tribes? According to McLuhan, we have reverted back now to kind of a tribal warfare state where we don't have to agree with people. We don't have to get along. We can find people who agree with us. Well, this has presented some key issues with communication. If you have information that is easily accessible, then the schema formation of children is easily controlled by others, not the community. The saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's when the only exposure that the child had to social norms and information was either the parents or the rest of the village. Well, now they get exposed to all sorts of stuff. So the control or the power, the influence of the family and the tribe has diminished. Anybody can cultivate a schema. Anybody can get on the internet or some other form of social media, start something viral, and basically start to cultivate a schema by continuing to put information out there. Schema are harder to change. And what I mean by that is the same example I used with finding your digital tribe. Because you can find people who agree with you, you don't have the pressure to change what you think as you normally would, where everybody around you is thinking something different. You can't use dissonance. So again, imagine a village where your only contact is the people around you and you're not like them. So that makes you feel strange, and so when you do something different, you feel this dissonance. Oh, that's not the social norm, and I'm doing something different, etc. Well, now you can find your tribe, so you don't have to listen or view anything you don't want to because you already belong. And this gets back to the need for humans to belong to a group. Well, they can find a group. So before I get out of this, I want to talk a little bit about the concept of news and issues with it. In the new age, we'll call it that, the glut of information and ease of distribution increased competition among suppliers. And all that means is, well, now you've got the newspapers competing with the internet, competing with, television, and competing with social media for your attention. Well, what are the desired outcomes of people who own TV stations, radio stations, etc.? Well, I can tell you, it's not that you have an accurate picture of anything. It's all about ratings. It's all about advertising dollars. Their goal is not to have everybody well informed. Their goal is to have viewers. It is really an important thing to understand when you start looking at information on any type of media that's controlled by somebody else. They're not in it for your edification. They're in it because they want advertising dollars or they have some other agenda. And their key is to entertain first, and after that happened, objective news was the first casualty. So, it brings up the question, do you really know anything? Well, media outlets are owned by people. Those people have specific beliefs and agendas. The news that you see and the way you see it are controlled by those people.